3, 2, 1. G'day, everybody, and welcome to a spontaneous and very special episode of Paddlecast, coming to you directly from the House of One. We're here in the new home of SUP Racer, inside the One Ocean Sports studio, here on the Gold Coast of Australia, and I wanted to do a quick live stream today to talk a little bit about the world rankings, which have finally been relaunched, and really just to play around in the new studio and test out the new equipment. A big thank you to the guys from One, Paul and Angie Jackson, Steve on the crew. We've built this new studio. Finally, SUP Racer has a home. Only took 8 years. Finally got a place that we can base ourselves and do a lot of cool stuff. So this is the new podcast studio, and the aim is we're going to do a new episode of Paddlecast every single week right here. Also aiming to do a live news show every Monday to recap what's been happening in the sport, because there's a lot going on in this sport. Even in the off season, there is a lot happening, and it's my goal this year to basically just be more transparent with everybody, share exactly what's happening behind the scenes, all the good things. Sometimes there's some bad things that we can discuss and try and work through the issues, but mainly we're going to focus on all the cool stuff that's happening, because there's a lot of really cool things happening in the sport these days. But today, I wanted to bring on a very special guest, none other than Mr. Paul Jackson himself. Jacko, welcome to the show, mate.
Yo. Thanks, mate. Been good to be here. Excited to get this little project of yours underway. Been exciting times getting it going. So,
yeah. Now, we've still got a few finishing touches to put on the wall here, a few little mementos to hang, but most of the studio is done. This was just a white, empty space a few weeks ago, and thanks to you guys and everybody that helped put it together, SUP Racer's finally got a home. It's very exciting, but folks, today it's just going to be a very quick, I'd say 10 to 15 minute, so probably an hour long show.
Let's see how we go, eh?
To talk about the big news on SUP Racer in the past few weeks, at least, was relaunching the SUP Racer World Rankings. Now, this is something I started building in 2013, and at the start of this season, basically just gave up on for various reasons. I was kind of, I was pretty burnt out with the sport. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the World Rankings and SUP Racer in general. So this season, I let it slide, and always kind of in the back of my mind, I thought it was something I wanted to bring back, but just in a slightly different form. And I guess it was when I was doing that, the Chaos of Champions article about the 22 different world titles we have in our sport. And we found another one, I think the next day. There's 23 now. So after I was doing that article, I thought this is something I really want to bring back, and I think maybe we need to bring it back. So for a couple of weeks, I was in here all day and all night, hammering away at spreadsheets, and we finally got it launched just after Christmas. So that's been very exciting. Thank you to everybody that's taken a look at that and shared and commented and debated and asked to add your flag. It's really cool because the big thing is it's not just about the pros. Like, it's really cool to see Boothie and Olivia on top, I think. But for me, the really encouraging thing is seeing people get stoked when they're ranked 700th in the world.
I think I'm ranked 286 this year, which is pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, that's your highest ever ranking.
Well, could be.
Yeah. No, it's I actually got a lot of messages from people just saying, like, wow, I'm ranked 500th in the world. I'm on the same leaderboard as, Olivia and Sonny and everybody. It's exciting. There's other people that are ranked 4,000th, and now they're like, all right, I'm going to go do a few more regional races next year and try and crack top 1,000. And I think that was the whole goal, really.
Yeah, it's a good concept. It's definitely one that's going to help grow the sport, I think. And, yeah, when I've seen the full rankings come out, it's pretty exciting to see, how big the list actually is and how deep it does run. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens this year as it progresses into a 2020 year.
New decade.
Yep.
What'd you think? Just bring the mic a little closer. Fist from your face. What'd you think of the Paddler of the Decade? Accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's hard to argue.
It's hard to argue. Like Connor, look, he's been around forever. He's one of those guys who's done good from early on in his career, and he's kind of just always been there. He's had a few ups and downs lately, but he's still right there. And as the sport's progressed and the competition's gotten so much better, he's grown and moved with it. And it's seen in the way that Connor's growing through his attitude and how he takes the sport now. So,
yeah, Absolutely. He's kind of like on a more condensed scale. He's like the Kelly Slater of SUP. Slater's been going 3 decades now, but Connors had to reinvent himself of the decade. It kind of started in the 2010-11 years when he was taking on like Danny Ching was the king and Jamie Mitchell was one of the best, and guys like Eric Terrien. He had to overcome them, Dave Kalama in the big downwind races in Hawaii. And then he kind of had to contend with his fellow young guns. Like he had this amazing rivalry with Kai Lenny, and then, Casper and Jake Jensen, always kind of attacking him. And then now he's had to reinvent himself again because Boothie came along, T2 came along, the Hasulio brothers. And now it's like we're in this phase where you got to be a serious athlete. And Connors, you can see his attitude's changed.
Yeah, it's gone of the days where maybe you could have just relied on natural talent. Now you got to mix that natural talent with a bit of good training and and really look at where you want to go with the sport. In the early days, some of the young guys could get away with that, just that talent base. Now it's definitely more than that. The Boothies come along and showing that good training and that real professional athlete attitude, and that's kind of what you need.
Yeah. And on the women's side, Annabelle Anderson.
Yeah.
Can't really argue with that.
No, been around 100% the strongest female paddler. Probably mix it right in there with the best of the guys and beaten many of the guys, and a lot of her definitely beaten me a few times. So it's
she beat me every time I was on the water with her. That's not really saying much, but there was a few very famous times when she defeated all the men.
Yeah.
I remember France, I'm pretty sure it was June 2012, and she won the Oleron Island race against a couple of the really good French. I'm not going to name their names. They still got bruised egos. But basically, like some of France's best ocean paddlers. And it was a very, very famous victory because she got line honours. And to me, that kind of summed up the decade. She was just so dominant that she was often beating all the men.
Yeah, definitely. But the dominance was there, and it was obvious, when you turn up to an event with Annabelle there, but she had the target on her back the whole time. And it was the goal of all the other girls, and for me, I always go with Ange, and you could see the dominance, and it was definitely she was definitely one paddler that stood out as a really dominant force in the female side.
Speaking of Ange, we're gonna have a comeback from Australia's number one.
I think so. She's pretty hungry, so
could Ange and Annabelle both come back this year?
Yeah, I guess you never know. They're actually, Annabelle's looking like she's doing a bit of foiling and moving around all right, so I don't see why not. It'll be a pretty exciting year.
All right, well, we're going to have a little bit of a look at the top-ranked athletes on the SUP Racer World Rankings and just talk about a little bit about their last season, but also where maybe they're going to finish this year.
Yeah.
So
pick them to pieces.
Yeah, a little bit of a critique. They're miles away. They're not going to hear this. Okay, let's just bear with us for a minute, folks. We're kind of new to this as well. All right, so here is the SUP Racer World Rankings. We'll bring us up on screen. 1 second.
It's crazy when you look at the list and you kind of see that, some of the guys that are outside the top 10. It's shows how deep the field runs these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep going on that, Jacko. I'm just figuring this out.
When you look at guys really outside the top 10, and there's some, like Leo, he's crazy strong paddler, and he's always at the pointy end. But for someone who's that strong a paddler to be right down, what is he in there, 22nd, and that really shows how strong it is. You got George 21. We got. Just waiting for the boss man there to get some good info on the screen there. If you see some sweat running down our backs, it's because we are in this little room and we haven't quite splashed out and got the aircon working just yet. So it's
yeah,
we use it as a little weight loss.
Toasty in here. It's about 35 degrees every day here in Australia.
Yeah.
The country's literally on fire, and it's pretty bloody hot in here as well.
All right. There we go. Chris, we got that.
It's just not playing along.
Who's that? I just see come up there. Danny Cheng. Danny Cheng in number 14. One of the strongest paddlers. You know, he would have been vying up there for paddler of the decade a little bit. Behind Connor, I'd say.
All right, there we go. Figured it out. New system here, folks. We're just running through it. Today's stream is pretty much just because I wanted to play around with my new toys. But let's bring the world rankings up on the screen. And as you can see, Michael Booth was pretty much in a league of his own this year. I don't think anyone would really argue with how far ahead Boothie was, right?
100%. Boothie killed it. As soon as he turned up to a race, realistically, and it was look, he's always going to be the dominant in the flat water, and but I think he's really improved on the downwind side. You know, it was definitely one of the downfalls for Boothie in the early days. Was he was a strong paddler, but he maybe didn't have that downwind side on the SUP. Always a good downwind ski paddler, just didn't really transfer it over in the early stages. Whereas coming into the last 2 years, like I myself noticed a huge difference in Boothie the way he does his downwind paddling now. You know, king of a cut when he's challenging someone like James Casey for the win. That shows how much he's worked on it. And Boothie's one of those guys who goes out there and looks at his weakness and spends a lot of time working on the parts that he really needs to. So, and that showed, you know, he's a dominant number one.
He's a consummate professional, Michael Booth. He's probably more than anyone elevated the sport in terms of professionalism, like being just an aggressively professional athlete. I think is probably the best term. He goes out there and hounds to get new sponsors. He really hustles. He's got his own paddle range now. He does training by Boothie, and of course on the water, he's winning pretty much everything over 40 minutes long.
Yeah, and that's I guess it's when it comes through with all the results this year. You know, when most of the guys, when you rock up to a flat water race, it's hard to say it, but half the time they're fighting for second place. You know, it's just a matter of when Boothie's going to make the break. You know, it's not if and when. It's you just kind of, you know, how far into the race. It is when he's going to make it.
We saw that in Europe. I think that race I live streamed on Corfu. It was the most anticlimactic race I've ever called. Boothie, the race was over after 10 minutes, and it was an hour and a half long race. He just got this little opportunity to break. He went, and it was like the other boys were resigned to the fact they'd lost straight away. Nobody tried to hammer to catch him. It was like, all right, Boothie's doing his thing. Let's fight for second.
Yeah, and I think he's got them all spooked a little bit at the moment, and it's going to be interesting to see if it transfers this into next year. And if anyone actually steps up, because at the moment, you know, a lot of the other paddlers I think are spooked. They rock up and it's more they're more concerned about making sure they stay on his wash rather than trying to think, hey, I can beat this guy, and try to actually, you know, break him or something like that. It's and when you're seeing the best of the top 10 really playing that game, we're just trying to stay with him rather than trying to beat him. He's already half won.
Yeah, the mind games, he's definitely rattled a few people. I know he rattled Connor a couple of years ago when he came on, and that's how Connor kind of had to reinvent himself this year, which he did pretty successfully in the second half of the year. And we'll get to Connor in a moment, but one guy that I think could challenge Boothie is world number 3, virtual tie with Connor there. Bruno, he's a very confident guy, and I know he took a lot of self-belief out of that win in Bilbao, for example, and pushing Boothie all the way at the ICF marathon. He's probably the one I would pick that would give Boothie the biggest test in those, you know, pure paddling contests, the 10K flat water races.
Yeah, it seems to be that's been his toughest competition when it comes to the grind race. I think Carolina was another one.
Carolina, yes, I forgot. I was trying to think the third one. Carolina, he went all the way with Boothie there.
And they were grinding hard at the end, and that's after that kind of distance to still be pushing like that was a really good effort. You know, maybe if I'm going to be a little picky here, maybe he's falling into the category where Boothie was a couple of years ago, where in the bumps, that side of the paddling's letting him down when it comes to the crunch. You know, just being a good flat water guy maybe isn't quite enough in learning to understand to read the bumps a little more might just
Yeah.
help elevate him from that 3 to that one position, you know?
Yeah, he's struggling a little in the ocean. That's definitely his Achilles heel. He's based in Portugal now, though, so in Porto, which has got some really good ocean conditions. So I think he's going to have the opportunity to do a Boothie and become a true all rounder. He's also on a different board this year. We're not sure which it's going to be. He put out a cryptic New Year's Day Instagram post, Bruno. If you missed it, go on Bruno Asilio's Instagram. He's left Lightboard, this brand right there, the team he raced for just for one season. And he hasn't said, I've got no idea where he's going. He hasn't told me. But he did say it was going to be a pretty major brand.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. It's, you know, the sport always needs these little developments, and fingers crossed he's got some good little plan going on, and, you know, having good equipment under your feet, especially when you're trying to run into a top 10, it's pretty important. So, you know, you don't want to line up on the line and give your competitor 1 or 2% head start before the hooter goes. So.
No, it's going to be very interesting to see what Bruno does this year. T2, I think, is definitely another one that's going to, if he just improves 1% or 0.5%, he's as good as Michael Booth quite easily. And he's so close. He's such an all-round, like, well-packaged, silky smooth paddler that if he was just that little bit stronger or faster, he could beat Boothie.
Yeah, T2's always been that one. He's kind of that guy who makes it look easy. You know, every time he's got good, smooth technique. Even when he's hurting, he still looks like he's cruising. And yeah, he's probably one of the big potential competitors there for Boothie going into the next year. You know, he's got that skill. He can read bumps as good as anybody. You know, he's probably one of the best in the world on the bumps. But he's maybe just a little up and down at the moment. Like, we've had some amazing good results and then a few results where he's struggled a little bit. So if he can just sort out those few where he struggles.
He was a little off the pace in Carolina. He got a 4th or 5th there. He was just off the pace in Bilbao, again, when Bruno and Boothie pulled away. Corfu, again, couldn't match it with Boothie there, but he's shown, like, he won the ISA beach race in probably not his favorite discipline. So he's proved that he can be on top in just about anything. And I'm pretty excited to see him race, him and Boothie and Bruno and Connor this year. But Connor Baxter, he's an interesting one because he basically said mid-season that he was done with the grind races. Like, he just never wanted to do another 15-kilometer flat water grind ever again. Like, he grew up in Hawaii. He paddled in the ocean. He's obviously an extraordinary sprinter, and, you know, in those beach races, he does very good. But he's over the 15K races. So I'm curious actually to see what his schedule is going to be this year. Like, he might be one of the guys that just flags the Euro Tour and focuses on some specific races where he knows, you know, it plays to his strengths, because stuff's becoming so specialized. Connor in the old day could win literally everything from a 200-meter race to a 50-kilometer Molokai, but now he's got to be a little more specialized.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I think if you, especially with someone like Connor, who has that natural ability to, especially in the bumps, you know, now to try and come out and grind like Boothie and that, it can be a little disheartening when, you know, you get beaten week after week and you're training hard and you were winning all the time. So to start specialising in the areas that you really can focus on, and kind of, you know, look, he's been the best downwind paddler forever. You know, he's been unmatched for many years, and that obviously translates into a lot of sprinting races. So yeah, kind of, I don't know, maybe it is time to specialise a bit more. It'll be sad to see that, because I think he's still got a lot to give. And
well, I mean, he can specialize in 80% of the sport.
Yeah, like even the most,
he'll still be in a lot of races.
Even those grind races, like, he's still there. It's just sometimes it can be board choice or just little things that can throw you out. And
I think it's mental. I think he just doesn't like them. He dislikes those races so much, he just gets over it.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
And a lot of paddlers are in the same boat. There's not many paddlers that love doing an hour and a half long flat water race.
Yeah, and maybe it's, you know, for these guys, maybe it is taking a little bit of time out to realise that, hey, look, it's an hour and a half of pain. It's really not that bad in the scheme of life.
Yeah.
So,
well, he's about to have a kid and probably not sleep for 6 months, so everything's gonna be put into perspective pretty soon for Connor Baxter. Maybe that'll give him some, you know, some dad strength. I remember watching Travis Grant in Molokai, actually against Connor Baxter, one of their most epic battles of all time at Molokai, and they've had a few. They hit China walls together, the 31-mile mark of that 32-mile race, and basically they were side by side. And I think Trav's brother yelled out for the boat, like, do it for Hugo, his son. And he said that just gave him such a jolt of energy that it got him over the line. And now Connor's going to have that. He's going to have that superpower.
Yeah. And it could give him that extra bit of motivation, to have someone to paddle for and to really make it. It's got to become your career. You have to go and draw the line and say, hey, look, I'm going to go and work and do something else, or I'm going to paddle as my career. And this could just give them that little extra motivation. And really, we're talking 1%. Lifts 1% in certain areas, and he's back right on the tail again. So
yeah, no, I'm fascinated by that. I remember reading an interview with Roger Federer, and he'd won literally everything. This is about 8 years ago, and he'd just started having kids. And he said, my only motivation to keep going now is I want my kids to watch me win Wimbledon. So, and they had, you got to be 5 or 6 to remember that. So that was his big motivation, was having kids. So I'm very curious to see Connor.
Yeah, I did a little bit of training with Connor throughout the years, and look, he's still as fast as anyone. So if he can get in the right headspace, he's an amazing talent, and you don't get to where he's been by just being average. You step it up, and he's got that talent there. And when I train with him, I'm quite amazed at how quick he is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, he's still the greatest of all time. He's still the GOAT.
For sure.
Like Boothie's clearly, he can outgrind him these days, but I mean, Connor can still out-sprint him. He can still out-downwind him. He can probably still out-buoy turn him.
Yeah, let's see if Boothie's still there in 10 years' time. That's...
Yes, Connor's had longevity.
Yeah, 10 years. Like he's got into it when he was young, which is definitely going to help, but it's... Yeah.
So it's funny, we talk about Connor maybe, specializing or picking his strength. He's still the greatest of all time. He's still this extraordinary paddler. It's just that he's been so dominant for so long. It's kind of strange to see him only at number 2.
Yeah.
But moving down the list, so the top 4, Boothie, league of his own, no one can argue. The next 3, I think everybody argued because these guys were almost a statistical tie. Connor only leapfrogged Bruno and T2 in the last race of the year in Paris. Bruno was virtually still a tie. T2 only needed, one result better in one of the bigger races, and he would be in second. So these guys are basically all tied, and I think that was pretty fair. Moving down the list, this is where it starts to become difficult to rank. Lincoln Dews, I was actually surprised he was so high when I, combined all the points, because he hardly raced this year, but he did have some real standouts. If you dive into his best 5, you can see he won one of the best races of the year. In terms of the level of competition, in terms of the excitement, in terms of the live stream and the production of the event at the ICF Worlds in China, which is a topic for a whole nother podcast. He won the beach race there and it was like vintage Lincoln. It was really exciting to see.
Yeah, look, Lincoln's, he's only a couple of hours up the coast from us, and he's actually, I think, since Boothie's come on the scene, he's picked up a lot of, the little bits and pieces, and he actually has turned into a really professional athlete. He's lifted his game a lot. In the early days, he maybe was a little bit flakier with the paddling. These days, he seems very focused, very committed to it, and the results showed, like early on with the 12 Towers. That's usually been a pretty tough race to win. There's been some good winners of that race over the years, and he came out and he was pretty dominant on that.
He beat everyone at the 12 Towers.
Yes.
He beat T2, he beat Boothie, he beat Jimmy, he beat Ty.
Yeah.
That's a solid race. It's going to be even more solid. It's coming up in about 2 months, and I'm going to be live streaming that one. Very excited. That's going to be one of the big races of the year, the 12 Towers. So he's had some really solid results. He also had a fantastic finish in Paris, which was one of the highest ranking events of the year. That's kind of how he leapfrogged Vinny, Arthur, Enza. I think he actually would have been down in about 10th if he didn't go to Paris and he was virtually tied with Boothie, lost to Boothie on a countback. So that was his Hail Mary at the end of the season that put him back in the top 5, but a relatively quiet year after a very dominant 2018.
Definitely a guy who can grind it out, though. Like when he gets into that battle, like how many times have we seen now Lincoln, Connor in a battle, where they just stroke for stroke, whether it was PPG or...
Yes.
or just at the ICF, I think it was the ICF.
Yeah, they had.
And it was just stroke for stroke, and it seems that those kind of races, especially maybe with the ocean race and the surf race, is definitely where he stands out a bit more. But yeah, I think you put Lincoln in those situations where it comes down to just physical strength and endurance, and he's going to be right there.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a lot of self-belief these days, which he didn't have earlier in his career, and he's a tough competitor. If he stops sailing so much, he's right into ocean sailing. He owns a yacht. He lives on a yacht, I think. And he just did the Sydney to Hobart, I believe, the biggest race in Australia, one of the biggest yacht races in the world. I heard a rumor that he wants to do a round the world sailing race. So if he doesn't get too distracted by sailing, he's always going to be up there. Arthur Rukin is a hard one to pick. He just somehow flies under the radar. He's always there, though.
Yeah, like early days, I used to be on a Fanatic team rider with him. It's hard to pick even back then. You know, like if someone had asked me back then if Arthur would be right up there in the world, I'd be like, I don't know. Like he's just not someone you just don't expect to pop out at the top of the race. And somehow at the end of every race, he's right there. So he's another naturally gifted kid.
So talented.
Very
Arthur
talented.
He's got extraordinary ability. He's a professional windsurfer as well, just for good measure. He could do anything. He could be a guy that could just come out and beat Boothie just randomly.
Yeah.
He's that talented.
I think he's done it.
Well, he did. Him and
APP.
T2. Yeah, the APP ones, and also at Vendée, his fifth best result there, he got second. T2, he and T2 went 1-2 ahead of Boothie. And it was, I think, the only time Boothie lost in Europe in the summer. The other guy, moving down the list, who was very, very close to cracking the top 5, and in some measures probably could be up there, was Vinny Martins from Brazil. I was stoked to see Vinny. He jumped 20 spots, as you can see here. This is the result change since 2018. So he's up 20 spots this year, and I think if anyone knows Vinny, that's no real surprise, because he's the hardest working guy in the sport.
Yeah, he's
probably the happiest too.
That's one thing with Vinny. Like he deserves to be there just because he's always happy. You know, if we went on happiness, we might just chuck him a few spots up.
If you got bonus points for positivity, Vinny would be probably world number 1.
Yeah, good paddler, like very solid. Every time I paddle with him, he's solid. He's got a bit of an unnatural ability to just stand on boards and bumps that most people probably would never stand on. You know, boards he rides in certain conditions, you're like, forget it. But he still somehow he manages it. So
yeah, very, very talented guy from Brazil. He's still young. He's still early 20s. He's got a very long career ahead of him. And he's one guy that's come up a little bit like Lincoln, you know, just a couple of spots behind still, but he didn't have the self-belief a few years ago. And I remember speaking to him last year after one of the big races, and he said, wow, like now I feel like I belong with the other guys, you know, with the Connors and the Boothies and the T2s. I feel like I'm part of that group now. And like, well, we already knew you had the talent, but I'm glad you realize it as well.
Yeah, and sometimes it just takes that one or two good results to realize that you can actually do it. And Vinny's one of those guys I think will feed on the more results he gets, the further up the rankings he'll probably go.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Vinny race this year. And another guy who had a barnstorming season 2019, Enzo Bennett out of Tahiti. There was rarely a podium in Europe that he missed. He was just on fire. Another guy that flies under the radar.
Yeah, like, even for me, it's something like when I was watching a lot of Euro Tour races, he was always there. And I was like, Enzo's there. You know, he's always in that top little mix and maybe just gets a little unlucky, gets squeezed out at the end when the racing gets really tight. You know, it's can get pretty pushy around the front of the pack these days. And if you're not pushy, you can kind of get squeezed out. So
yeah, comments from the gallery. Do the Brazilians have any distinct skill sets or identifiers? Just, I think their passion. They're an extremely passionate people in Brazil, and that genuine, I mean that. They're so passionate. They're very emotional, and that translates into their performances. Like Vinny gives 100% every time. He's not the kind of guy, he'll never give up, and he will push himself beyond the pain barrier. You look at him at the finish line of an hour-long race, he is dead.
Yeah, he goes to his bonks. Like he either bonks or he wins. You know,
that's true, yeah.
And that's, look, it's good if you can push yourself that hard, and he does, you know. And I'm sure at the ICF when he won the gold, I'm pretty sure the Brazilians were pretty stoked on the beach.
I'm sure that was the best after party of the week.
Yeah,
no doubt. The Brazilians love to have fun. So moving down the list, another another guy who's on the move up. You can see plus 11 this year. Ty Judson, still, I think he's only 18 years old.
Yeah,
he's a bit of a man-child, but he's got a very long career ahead of him. And, still a little bit of a roller coaster in terms of results, but some of his results were, as we'll see from the best 5, were right up there with the best.
Yeah, he's been someone who's coming through in Oz for a while now, but I think last year was really his big breakout on the World Tour side of things. He's always kind of been there in the Oz, and maybe earlier day board choices weren't there for him. Now he's got some probably good boards under his feet. He's got a bit better training. I'm doing some stairs with him. You know the stairs, Chris, up down at the alley.
Oh yeah,
we did some stairs with Ty one day, and I think I'd been doing them for a few months, so I was kind of stair fit, and it was the first time he had done them, and he's flogged us. So
he's a fit young boy.
Fit young guy. He's got that little bit natural ability, and yeah, it's showing this year. He's, you look at him wobbling around sometimes, and you think he's going to burn out, but he never really does.
Make a bold prediction. This year, Ty, what's going to be his finishing rank?
Be interesting to see how his off season's going, and if he is pushing some training in the off season. If he has a good off season, I reckon he could jump a few spots. I'd pick him to be about number 5.
Yeah,
yeah.
All right.
He's got a good downwind space set as well, so he can downwind. He can do a bit of everything. If he picks the right events to do, for sure he can be up there.
All right, another guy who's perennially, I'm not going to try and say it. I'm tired, folks. Every year, he's very, very difficult to rank because he doesn't really race anymore. And when he does, he's the most hyper-specialized athlete in the sport. Casper Steinfath, the Viking. As you can see, he's actually gone up incredibly, 34 spots from last year, but he just didn't race much last year. This year, in some respects, he was the best paddler in the world, and other times he wouldn't even be in the top 30. It's really difficult to rank Casper. He's an extraordinary short course. He's probably the premier short course paddler in the world.
Got an amazing sprinting technique. I think everyone who's sprinted against him kind of watches him and thinks, "Oh, I've got to go home and kind of study it or learn it or something." Just to, his body drive and the way he paddles. He's got a unique style for it, and it comes to a sprint race. He's definitely probably one of the best at the moment.
Didn't really have any throwaways, counting a couple of very low results there. Just didn't race much, but had a couple of standout results. So Casper, he could do anything. If he's going to race a bit more next year, obviously he could easily be top 5. If not, he might drop down a little bit. One of the young guys on the move, though, up 32 spots this year. And speaking of good sprinters, Claudio Nica. This guy was second behind Connor at the ICF 200 meters. He won the ISA. Don't think we can call it the 200 meters anymore. The ISA, the surf sprints.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll call it their new format there. Over a short distance, this guy is one of the best, and knocking on the door of the top 10, Claudio Nica. You watched him race much?
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I've raced a lot against him. And look, it's been a bit of a surprise to me. Like I actually thought Leo was the better of the two brothers, realistically, but
he was for a long time. But he's a lot older than Claudio.
Yeah, I know. Hey, look, age is really nothing. If you're going to start picking on age, come on. It's
where are you ranked these days?
Didn't race last year. It's okay. Coming back.
Well, Claudio.
Look, he's always been there. It's they do an aggressive style of racing, so like. I think it's probably needed. Like if you're going to race in this top 20, you're going to have to be aggressive. So yeah, it's deserved. He's definitely worked a lot on the sprint game. Maybe a bit more to work on the long distance game to crack that top 10. So a lot of guys that you see from now, like Casper and Claudio, they're really specialising in one part more than the other. Like Casper's a sprinter, Claudio's a lot of results from sprinting.
Yeah.
Just go back to Casper. It's good to see, someone like Casper winning the Red Bull. That's an event that takes a lot of skill, but also a lot of luck. And for this same guy to win it 2 years in a row, it's pretty impressive, in conditions where only, I think, 6 people finished.
Yeah.
And for him to win it 2 years in a row, that's a pretty good feat. That's
that race is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So we'll go through this race. I'm going to go through this list pretty quick, so we want to look at the top women as well and some of the juniors. But Daniel Sulio, he's got 11 races listed there, but he really didn't race much. A lot of these were smaller regional ones in Asia that he was supporting, but he didn't have the opportunity to or just chose not to race as much in some of the majors. So he is definitely a guy that could match it with the top 5.
I think he'll if he races more, he'll jump up the ranks for sure.
Yeah, he's got the talent. I'd put him 0.5% behind his brother at the moment, and maybe 1 full percent behind Boothie, but he's right up there. And we saw at the ICF Marathon, it was Boothie, Bruno, Daniel, very close behind 1, 2, 3, and they were a mile ahead of the rest of the field. So Daniel thoroughly deserves a top 10 spot. Another guy that's having a kid. What's with these paddlers just popping out the babies? Noik, the number 1 junior. We'll come back to the juniors in a minute. Danny Ching just needs to do a couple more races.
Yeah, Danny's always going to be there. He's been one of the best paddlers. He's got amazing technique. He's strong. He's probably busy these days. Runs a brand, does all the working stuff as well as
got a family.
He's got a family, and it does take its toll of how much you can travel and stuff. So, to be honest, holding 14th position in the world is still a pretty good effort for probably how busy he is.
It's pretty respectable. I mean, you look at his virtually tied with Martin Vitri. Martin raced 17 times.
Yep.
He had 17 opportunities. So did Tom, Ludo, Itzel to get good results. Danny's holding all 5 of his races. He couldn't afford a single throwaway. And 1 or 2 of these were smaller US regional events. So Danny, the fact that he's still 14th with barely racing shows that, he's kind of one of those ageless kings of the sport. The French trio here, kind of just knocking their... leading the charge of that second tier of athletes. They're not quite at the Boothie level yet, but they're very close. Like everyone in this top 20 is very, very close these days.
Yes, I think Martin's had a few good results here and there, and he's sometimes he's actually right at the pointy end, maybe just drops away just at the finish. But those 3 guys will be in there for sure.
Well, this is exciting. I mean, you got T2 and Arthur and Noik. He's French as well, technically. They've kind of led the charge on the rankings, but these 3 are right behind. Ludo had some fantastic results. He won the Glagla almost exactly 12 months ago. He won the French titles, actually, for distance. Beat these boys. And Tom and Martin, they've had some big results. They got a lot of talent. They could all easily be top 10 next year. Itzel is kind of, along with Vinny, he's leading the charge for South America. Itzel out of Peru.
Yeah, he's actually made a pretty good improvement towards the end of the season. I think this year, maybe earlier in the year, is off the pace a little bit. And then towards the end of the year, he's actually come through and at the back end of a lot of the races, he seemed to be a little stronger. So I know he's working, I think, with Boothie at the moment on the Boothie program. So
all right, scary thought.
Yeah, so I think he's trying to work on those weaknesses, and it might be starting to show off. So.
He's still young. He's still, 20 years old? He's got a long career ahead of him.
Passionate paddler, a lot of passion in what he does. Yeah. And when you see him get a result, it shows of how they celebrate the results. It's not just like, hey, look, I won a race. It's,
No, he's got that Latino flair for sure. He is passionate. Jimmy Casey, another guy that didn't race a lot this year, but picked up a very memorable, very emotional win in Molokai. That was one of the stories of the season. He was preparing for Molokai. His dad was very ill with cancer, and he basically created a fundraiser. The whole community rallied behind him, and it was an emotional win. That meant a lot to him, and it was kind of one of the fairy tale victories of the season. It also cemented his reputation as one of the most underrated ocean paddlers in the world. Jimmy is phenomenal.
Yeah. Look, James has got heaps of potential there. Every time you race him, and I think it showed in all the Aussie races he's done, he just comes out of nowhere and blows everyone away. And maybe if he didn't foil so much, maybe you should leave the foiling alone and head back over to the SUP racing. And
we've lost a few good men and a couple of good women to foiling.
But Jimmy's
one of them.
James always gets weed on his foil, so it slows him down.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's
raced against him. Jimmy. We call him Jimmy in Australia. It's just what we do when someone's called James. If you're confused. James Casey, it's Jimmy. So what happened?
Oh, it's just this foiling technique catches a lot of weed.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
So kind of lets me and Benny get ahead of him.
Yeah. You beat him in a foil race?
Oh, I didn't, but Benny did. So yeah.
All right.
He had weed, but it's okay.
Well, yeah, Jimmy is definitely one of the best foilers in the world. That guy is a freak.
He's solid.
Rounding out the top 20 and just knocking on the door of the top 20, a couple of Tahitian boys. Keone, this kid is there was a comment earlier in the gallery. Who can you watch out for? Keone Solpus. He is going to be unstoppable in a few years. This is a man-child if I ever saw one. He was 6 foot tall when he was 12. Now he's still only, I think, 15 years old. Maybe 16 by now, but he's still he's got 2 or 3 years of being a junior left in him. And we saw at the Air France Paddle Festival that epic battle he had with T2 all the way to the finish of that nightmarishly long race. It's 23 kilometers. And he pushed T2 for 22.8 of those kilometers.
Another one who actually paddles and doesn't look like he's putting much effort into his paddling. Just kind of paddles, and you think, oh, he's not going that quick. And then you look at him next to someone like T2 and you know the speed's there. It's just crazy how fast these, especially for kids, can paddle without putting or making it look hard. So
yeah, Keone is he's still making a name for himself, but I guarantee you, folks, if you wanted to bet your house on who's going to be one of the most dominant paddlers this decade, I kind of said who will win the next Paddler of the Decade award. This guy is a real shot. He is just phenomenally strong, and he's still literally just a kid. It's kind of scary. He's basically one of those Tahitians that grew up in an outrigger canoe. Yeah. And he's extraordinarily talented. He's got he's had a pioneer to follow in the footsteps of right behind him on the rankings, George Cronstedt. And you can see George, he turned 39 this year, still, knocking on the door of the top 20. And I look back through the stats of the last 6 years, George and Connor were the only two guys that got 100+ points every single season. So George has been the second most consistent paddler of the decade, really. So the fact that he's entering the Masters category next year is a scary thought for everyone in the Masters division. Enjoy your time in the sun. But one of the cool things, the rankings system, is that you can search by name and nationality, obviously. You can see where Paul Jackson's 282. You can see I'm ahead of you, Jacko.
Oh,
look at that. I did race.
That's why you're so good at training this morning. Did
race 6 times. I even had some throwaways, and I'm still not top 200. But you can search by nationality. You can look at all the French boys. But one of the cool things is you can search by division now. And next year, the goal is to actually create a dedicated junior world rankings and masters world rankings. But this year, I was missing so much age data. Like, I just didn't know exactly who was master and junior that I didn't want to make a dedicated leaderboard and miss half the people that should be in there. So for now, you can just search juniors and see who the top ranked juniors in the world are, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, this is the future right here. And so I just want to quickly go through this list with you before we get onto the women's rankings. Who do you think out of this list will be ranked highest in the world in 2020? Give me 2 names. I'll make it easy for you.
I think Rye's going to take a big step. Like that kid, he just hammers. Like every time I've seen him, it's just flat out. And I've seen quite a few of his races lately, and yeah, he's putting the hammer down. So I think he's definitely going to jump up there. I guess the hardest question is, are they all going to get to a lot of the races to get that experience under their belt? And that's when you're talking about the juniors. That's part of the important part of the growing into the sport, is getting to those races. And as the guys like Connor have come through, they developed, I think, a lot because of the experience they had.
The juniors of 5 years ago had more opportunity than the juniors of today.
Yeah, it's definitely
the brands were throwing around a lot more money, and especially at the kids.
Yeah,
5 years ago,
the industry's gotten a little tighter lately, so budgets aren't probably there and stuff like that. So
some of the brands aren't even there.
Yeah, that's right.
5 years ago.
So if you want to get those budgets, and you've got to be able to display probably just a bit more than just talent. You've got to come out with. And I'd really say to kids coming through to look at guys like Boothie, how they're developing more than just becoming a fast paddler. They're looking at the future and the brand, putting themselves as a brand realistically. So, it's hard to pick a couple there. I can see
Polar Bear.
Yeah, he's
Casper's the little mini Casper out of Denmark. He's kind of Casper's protege. Still barely says a word. Polar Bear is just this little fluff ball of blonde hair, but he's very quickly becoming a threat in some of the races. He actually won one of the Euro Tour races, I believe, Battle of the Coast. He knocked off a few very, very good athletes there. He's actually beaten Casper a few times now. I think Casper's maybe got 1 year left as the Danish #1, and then Polar Bear's taken over. But Polar Bear, he's still, obviously all these kids have got very long careers ahead of them. And Polar Bear is one of the guys that's passionate and serious about it. He's not just like, maybe I'll do a paddler maybe I'll be a paddler because I like to surf or whatever. He wants to be a paddle athlete.
And he's probably got a good advantage too because, in that Europe base, getting to a lot of European events, and at the moment the European side of the racing is definitely standing out. Like they got a strong racing program. The Euro Tours just growing from year to year, and Balazs stepping that up, and to have that's going to grow those future paddlers tenfold.
It's definitely the epicenter of the sport now.
100%.
We saw it used to be America hands down. America kind of, it's faded a little bit, but Europe's just come really strong.
Yeah.
And, between the Euro Tour, between all of the, you got 44 nations or so, they've all got their own national series and national titles. There's a lot of independent races. There's huge regional events like Glagla. We're going to have 500 people there in a couple of weeks. There's so many. The APP, I think, is doing 1 or 2 or 3. It's hard to keep up with those guys. 1 or 2 there next year. There's going to be so much happening in Europe that you're right. If you're a junior there, that's where all the opportunity is. And you can see Polar Bear is the highest ranked European. Noik is technically European, but he lives in the Pacific Ocean on a tiny little island.
And maybe I'm a Newark. He might come out this year too. I think he's finished school like a lot of last year. Maybe he was doing a lot of schooling. It's limited the events he could do. Actually, I did a training session with him in Hood River, and he blew me away. Actually, like I wasn't feeling too unfit. Like I felt all right, maybe too much foiling, but it was just another level completely again. And I think if he puts a bit like a solid year into it, he'd definitely be right up there for the top junior.
Well, I'm interested to see what Sam can do. Sam McCulloch out of Australia. He's Australia's top junior.
Just had a great result at King of a Cut, actually. I was surprised we're on the beach, and he came in, I think, 3rd spot overall, which was pretty good considering most of the other guys were on unlimited boards. Yeah,
Sam is a very good ocean paddler out of Western Australia. Starting to make a name for himself. I believe he's trained by Boothie as well, so he's going to be a strong paddler. Another one to watch there, up 640 spots. I mean, he had a token rank last year, but he did improve a lot. Was Kei Komatsuyama out of Japan. Very, very impressive. Basically went toe-to-toe with Rai at the ICF Worlds in China. Tyler Bashore kind of leading the charge for America. Again, the US on the men's side has never been nearly as strong as on the women's side. America's kind of always dominated the women's sport, but apart from Danny, they never dominated the men's, which was interesting. So Tyler's got a little bit of pressure on his shoulders there. Young Jack Seymour lives in Hong Kong. His mother is Canadian. He's got about 18 different nationalities. A very, very talented young kid. Also trained by Boothie. Boothie's like the Pied Piper. He's going to have just this family of...
He must be killing it, eh? Walking around money shoes.
Yeah, they're all paying him for his training. So, I'm on his holiday in the Swiss Alps at the moment. No, but a lot of these kids are trained by Boothie, which is a scary thought. And I think the other half are trained by... who's the French coast? Vincent.
Oh, yep.
Vincent, he's... Training Week on Instagram. He's an extraordinary coach as well. So a lot of these kids actually have coaches already, which is really cool. They're taking the sport seriously. But that's the juniors. I just want to do a quick shout out to the masters. And again, this list isn't complete at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that everyone in the top 100, I know if they're a master or not. Kelly Margetts, he didn't race much, but he hung on for 1 more year as the top master. We'll see if he fully retires next year or not, but he's kind of long been the king of the masters.
I can't see him retiring.
Oh, he loves it.
Yeah,
he loves
the grind. He's still on the creek. Like we all train in the same creek, and he's still there in the mornings. Maybe has a bit more time off here and there, but when the races come, for sure, Kelly will be there.
Yeah, he's ageless. He's about 47 or 48 these days, but he still mixes it with the kids. Steve Miller, out of Florida, I believe, one of the Flying Fish crew. The Flying Fish crew have got a very big entourage going over there in Florida. They're doing some cool stuff. And this guy is one of those just East Coast weapons. Tommy Boudet Jr. But one name I want to see race more next year is down here, Larry Kane. This guy, 1984 Olympic gold medalist. He is just meticulous with his training. He's part of the Paddle Monster crew, and I would love to see And I hope these world rankings can actually encourage more masters to race a bit more, because this can be more intense than the elite races, the masters.
These are the guys who have got their man strength. The guys, in the pro division there, they're still mostly kids, so they're still running on, that kid juice.
Yeah.
Because these guys have got the man strength, and this is where the real power comes in. So it's none of these guys ever like to give up. I'm pretty sure every single one though on the beach just says, "Oh, I'm not really racing competitively that much anymore." But hit the water, and look out.
Yeah. So the Masters, always a very interesting division. We're gonna have a dedicated Masters World Rankings next year, which I'm excited about. We're still working out exactly what the age divisions will be, but we're gonna try and recognize the age divisions as well. Definitely gonna be a Masters World Rankings though. So that's the men's world rankings. Boothie, mile ahead. Everyone else currently fighting for second. But let's jump over to the women's, because that was a very, very, very interesting season. And I don't think anyone can really argue with who ended up as the world number one. I'm sure some people will, but before I even looked at the numbers, I had an inkling that Olivia was going to be number one.
Yeah, she's always been consistent. She's a good all-round paddler, like very, very good skills. Like same thing as like on a lot of the top man side of things. You've got to be a good all-round paddler to be that number one. And Olivia's always been that way. Same thing, an old ex-teammate when I used to ride for Fnatic.
Yes.
Good all-round paddler. Can do that, has that good endurance, like actually surprises me a lot of the times on the endurance and how she gets stronger towards the end of the races. So,
do you think anyone's going to challenge her this year?
Oh, 100%. I think...
or do you think anyone's going to beat her this year? Of course everyone's going to challenge her. There's a lot of strong women, but do you think she'll stay on top?
I think it's going to be very, very tight for the female side. It'd be good to see maybe a lot of the girls do a lot more of the same events to really determine the real, like it seems like you might get 2 or 3 girls turn up to one event and then 2 or 3 different, so it gets a little scattered, so they don't compete against each other quite maybe as much as the men do.
Women never really raced each other this year.
Yeah, so
you had like the APP events, you had the ISA, you had the ICF, you had some of the big regionals. They were rarely all on the same start line, if ever, this season. And we never really got to see a couple, like Bilbao. I mean, most of them were there, but yeah, you're right. Maybe it's just an opportunity thing in terms of, sponsorship and finances.
100%.
Women are always underrepresented in terms of.
You can only get to so many races, and you choose the ones that are going to be beneficial for you, the ones that you enjoy doing. Like, if that's a big part. If you enjoy doing it, you're going to do well there as well. So, but yeah, look, she was pretty dominant in a lot of the events she went in. Definitely deserves to be number one, 100%.
And the other thing is the women's field historically and still is just shallower than the men's field. There's just generally probably twice as many men at the race, and so the rankings usually go maybe twice as deep in terms of world-class athletes. So even though, a few top guys might be missing, but you don't notice because the guy in 27th is phenomenal. But the women's, it drops off a little faster. That's changing, but it's still true to an extent. So I think when a few of the top women aren't missing, we notice that a bit more. But yeah, you're right. I'd love to see them all compete next year, and I'd love to see if Olivia can hang on, because she was in fine form this year. Finished with 5 wins. Bilbao, the biggest race of the year in terms of the new race index. She won at the ICF. She won in San Sebastian. She won all over Europe. ICF was probably the most impressive, though, because she won the 200-meter sprints when she didn't expect it at all. She entered that event for fun, she said. She's like, I just want to go out there with the other girls and the other women and have some fun. She ended up winning the gold. And then 24 hours later, she smashed out another gold medal performance in the beach race.
I think that's the mindset too. Like, as you start winning events, all of a sudden events that maybe you weren't so confident with, all of a sudden become a reality. And the 200-meter sprints is probably that for Olivia. She went from maybe just going into it for fun, but with that confidence and self-belief now, that really anything is possible.
Yeah.
So, and that's how it continues into next year. That's going to be the exciting one for her.
Well, speaking of self-belief, I don't think Seychelles lacks confidence. And she showed that this year. Every time she won, this woman has some extraordinary celebrations. She is a very, very passionate athlete. And she was battling injury for a while there, but she came back just in time to clean up on the APP side of things. Again, didn't race that much outside of that, but did enough to thoroughly deserve number 2 in the world.
Yeah, look, very strong paddler. Same thing, works a lot on the weaknesses. I've always, maybe the early days where she suffered a little bit in the wave side of things. I follow her through some Instagram stuff, and you can definitely see how much she works on, the weakness side that she's got, and that showed off becoming number 2. There's probably some events in there that in previous years she probably wouldn't have done that great on, and then this year she come out and smashed it. So,
Seychelles, she's phenomenal. She basically almost made it the clean sweep on the APP events. She definitely won Paris and Osaka, the biggest 2. She won London as well, and just behind April Zilg in New York from memory. Europe, she was a little off the pace there. I was a little surprised at San Sebastian, which isn't her favorite conditions out in the rough ocean, but in Bilbao as well, a little bit off the pace there.
Yeah, knows how to sprint, knows how to grind out a race. You put yourself right in there every time when you do those 2 things.
Fiona, perhaps the best all-round women's paddler in the sport. If you look at everything from downwind to sprint races to courses to distance, somehow she competes with Olivia and Sonny and Seychelles in the distance races. She's about 3 foot tall. I don't know how she does it. Yeah. She gets those arms working. Very famously, she picked up, it was a Euro Tour event on Crete. She won just this gnarly race, which was part downwind, part sidewind, part brutal headwind, and she somehow held off Sonny Honschied. And on that headwind stretch, I was like, well, Fiona's got no chance. Sonny's just going to muscle through it. But Fiona hung on. I was really impressed there. So very, very well-rounded paddler. I'd probably say the best all-rounder.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Like, I spent a lot of time with Fiona and her family. Great family.
Her dad actually helped build this studio.
Yeah, he was in here. He was
Shout out
sticking
to
the
McRae
stuff
Wild
on the roof, actually.
Yeah.
Putting the soundproofing up. He loved it.
Yeah. No, McRae.
But Fiona's got that great ability to read bumps and read the ocean, and she spends a lot of time, surfing waves and in Hood River. That's the crazy side of where you learn to feel it's not an ocean there, but obviously it's river, but you get to just feel the water, and anyone who's competed at Hood River, it's probably been touched up by Fiona on that downwind run. Like there's very few men that can beat her. Yeah, it's crazy. She's so fast there, and whether she's on a 12.6 and still beats you, and it's like, whoops, Yeah.
You're gonna hope she doesn't take up foiling.
Yeah, she actually does foil already.
Right.
She's done a little bit of downwind, and but hopefully she keeps paddling as a number 1 sport.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal talent, Fiona Wild. She's somehow, I mentioned, stayed ahead of Sonny Honschied at that famous race in Greece. Sonny had a relatively light season. She didn't race a whole lot, but when she did, she showed that I can safely say she's the number 1 long-distance paddler.
Yep.
With Annabelle now out of the sport, she's the powerhouse.
Yeah, for sure. Like she's when it comes to those long 10K and over grind paddles, she definitely seems to have that next gear. So it's going to be an interesting run into next year if Sonny decides she's going to do a bit more paddling or not. But yeah, you can see what the results there.
Yeah, she took out Carolina again. She's taken over Annabelle's mantle there. She did the exact same thing at the ICF Marathon. She outlasted Olivia. Olivia told her she was literally just hanging on until the final lap of that race. An interesting little side story there. They were the clear breakaway. They did most of that race on their own, and it got to the final lap with about 3Ks to go, and Sonny looked over her shoulder and said, do you want to race? Woman against woman now. And Olivia said, no, you go. Like, I'm just hanging on. I was just trying to get as much of a free ride as possible. This is yours. So basically, Olivia, very politely said, I'm not going to try and sneak past you at the end. This is your race. That just shows the strength of Sonny, that the world number 1 was hanging on.
Yeah.
And she picked up Glagla as well. Mentioned that race on Crete there. That was where she got second behind Fiona, but still a phenomenal talent, Sonny Honschied, and hopefully she races a little bit more next year. She could challenge for world number 1. Speaking of phenomenally strong athletes and someone who's really come up in the past 2 years, she was always kind of that journey woman, hovering around the lower parts of the top 10 at the majors, and she'd always be there, but she'd never be a contender. Now she's a legit contender. April Zilg.
Yeah, it definitely looks like she's got that focus and that grit, determination. It's very very similar, I think, with Seychelles, how they just the competitive side is hungry. You know, they just, the tougher the competition, the better. You can see it in the way they celebrate and the way how hard they put it in. Definitely got some good results towards the end of the year, and actually, from what I've seen of the paddling side, looks like she was just getting stronger and stronger. So,
well, I congratulated her on her runner-up at Carolina Cup, and she was disappointed. She was like, I'm not happy to finish second. I want to win this damn race. That used to be her hometown. She's now based in California, but she's determined to be the best. She's not settling for the fact that she's moved up maybe 6 or 7 spots to number 2. She wants to be number 1. So that's an exciting prospect for the women's sport, that you got such a hungry competitor that's been around so long, so experienced, and still on the rise.
Very, very strong girl. She's got the ability. She's got the training ethic to do it.
I think she's a CrossFitter.
Yeah.
And she is just phenomenally strong. So she could do anything this year. That's exciting. Someone who I was personally very, very excited to see move up a lot of spots this year was probably the happiest athlete in the women's field, Suzak Molinaro. She's kind of similar to April. She's a bit of a journey woman. She's always been there in the European, summer on the Euro Tour and all of the events around Europe. She was basically perennially, famously always finished 4th, 1 spot off the podium. But this year she's stepped it up a couple of spots.
Yeah, definitely. We actually watched a lot of the female racing this year, and yeah, usually I think Suzak would have dropped off the train at the front, but this year she was definitely in that mix, and actually it was good to see. Like, it's good to see the progression over the few years, and then it's good to see someone like Suzak take that step into that front pack, towards the end of the race. It's a hard step to do, and it usually just something clicks with the training or something like that, and she's definitely done it. So it's going to be exciting to see if she can take that next step now and then start pushing right at the front at the end of the race.
You can see there, 2nd and 3rd all the way through in almost all those events in Europe. The outlier there is the ICF Beach Race, which was definitely the happiest 2nd place finish of a race I've ever seen. Suzak Molinaro, I think she finished 4th in both the distance and the sprints. And the ICF's they're a little more cutthroat than the ISA. The ISA gives out kind of that 4th place pity medal. Copper.
I got a copper.
You got a copper. the Gold Star Award. But the ICF does full Olympic style, gold, silver, bronze. Suzaki just missed out in both of them. And she said before that race, I'm so sick of, she called it the chocolate medal. I'm so sick of the chocolate medal in 4th place. Like, all I want to do is get a medal in this beach race. And she went out there with her very, very good friend, Olivia Piana, and they put on a clinic. She was the only one that stayed within shouting distance of Olivia, and she was happier than Olivia. Olivia won the race, but Suzak was so stoked, and they're very good friends, so Olivia was celebrating with her at the finish. It was a really cool way to finish off the ICF Worlds there. Going through the list, another Spaniard who's rocketed out of nowhere this year, literally didn't have a world ranking at all in 2018, is Espa Barreras. She was such a dark horse. When I was doing the San Sebastian live stream, I didn't even know who I was calling. She was 100 meters away from me. I was like, who is that in 2nd? And it took until the end of the race before even I ID'd her. I'd never met her before, never seen her race. She came out and blitzed it. Like, Seychelles was in that race. Suzak, I think, finished the 3rd in that race. So she beat a lot of world-class paddlers in San Sebastian to finish runner-up behind the world number 1, Olivia Piana. Espa, I'm presuming you haven't raced against her, but a new name on the women's top 10 is pretty exciting.
Yeah, like I was out for pretty much this whole year, and really to see new names come into the top 10, that's what I want to see. I love to see new faces come through. So yeah, exciting.
So wonder why she actually picked up 2 ISA world titles. She won the ISA again. There's a lot of the top women missing from the ISA this year, but the fact that she won both those golds showed that San Sebastian was no fluke. Like, it was still a solid field over there in El Salvador. So very, very talented Espa Barreras. I'm sure I'm butchering that Spanish pronunciation. Lives in the Canary Islands, trains in absolute paradise. So she's one to watch this year. Amandine Chazot just seems to always be there with a minimum of fuss, just constantly hitting the podiums in Europe and beyond. So she's had another big year, picked up a couple of silvers behind Esper at the ISA Worlds. Just one of those supreme talents. If it's downwind, she's actually a genuine shot. She won Cup to Crew, which is a Barcelona downwinder, and she could do. I think she'll still be there top 10 this year. Lena Ribeiro, I was stoked to see her up there in the top 10 this year because she represents basically all of South America. Lena, the number one in Brazil, the number one in South America, doesn't get the opportunity to race as much as some of the more famous names, but when she does, she is an absolute weapon. Won the 11 cities again this year and picked up a couple of big results there in Brazil, the Aloha Spirit, and historically, she won the first ever Pan Am gold medal alongside Connor Baxter.
Look, another crazy 11 cities.
Yep, your favorite race, Jacko, the 11 City Tour. I know you're making a comeback this year, but to round out the top 10, someone who I am beyond impressed with is Jade Housen. Somehow still qualifies as being a junior. I feel like she's been around forever.
A long time.
I watched her, I'm pretty sure I watched her at the BOP, which hasn't existed for 6 years. She was always there at the PPGs, and even though she doesn't race internationally as much as the other women, still got into the top 10. And if there's one person I would pick as a prospect for Paddler of the Decade, the next 10 years, it would be Jade.
Yeah,
she's incredible.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see as maybe they start to broaden out and do a few more events around the world to see. Like, I think the results will jump a long way up. You know, solid paddler, young, good focus.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
Jade,
she's
Annie. It's crazy. You start getting into some really good paddlers.
Well, Jade and Annie, almost a statistical tie there for the 10th spot in the number one junior. Jade, same as Annie. They got good head on their shoulders. They're very intelligent, and I think they've both got very long careers ahead of themselves. Not sure. Jade, I haven't spoken with her much this year. She just wasn't at that many events, so I'm not sure what her plans are for this year. I hope she's going to race more. Annie, I'm a little worried that we've lost her.
Big wave surfing, second.
Between big wave surfing, she's on the WSL events now, and foiling.
It's hard to fit it all in, eh? And
we might have lost another good paddler there.
Yeah. I think she's still going to be there.
We'll see.
For sure.
I hope she keeps racing because she's a phenomenal talent, Annie Reichert. So Jade and Annie are now leading the charge on the women's side for the young guns, and just two absolutely phenomenal talents. We can't say enough good things about these two. Going through the list here, a lot of the Europeans are pushing up into the top 20. I'm stoked to see Katarina having some good results. She's been a professional windsurfer that finally this year decided she'd rather be a professional stand-up paddler. So look out for her this year. Marika Okawaki had some amazing results, especially the ICF Worlds. And looking all the way down here, there's some big names that were injured this year. Hopefully they'll make a comeback. Shay and Candace fought injury most of the year, so they've had results way below what you'd expect. But if we just quickly look at the juniors in the women's, here we go. And this list was hard to make accurate because these women have very few opportunities, most of them, to compete. So it just really came down to a handful of events, specifically the ICF Worlds, which had 3 separate junior races. But Jade and Annie, no question, they're far and away the top 2 junior women. But it's really cool to see, like Brianna out of New Zealand, Laura out of Italy, some of the Spanish girls, where they're looking, Duna, Nuria, Sonia, all for paddling from the same club out of the island of Mallorca. So actually Spain's got about 5 or 6 of the top junior women. They're doing a phenomenal job with their juniors, Spain. So looking at these junior women, is there one name that stands out? You can't pick Jade Housen, that's cheating. Is there one other name that stands out as being the big bolter this year?
I think it comes down to, as you said, I think it's opportunity. I think a lot of these young girls are going to have the skill, that level behind them. It's just a matter of if they've got the opportunity to expose that kind of skill on the world stage. So yeah, I guess it's hard on that side.
Well, let's get a billionaire investor to buy out One Ocean Sports.
That's right.
And we can fund the One junior team.
That's right. I'll run the team.
All right, who would you pick? Put you on the spot.
Look, I'm a Kiwi, so Brianna.
All right. Loyal. Alrighty, there you go. So if there's any billionaires out there watching, if you want to acquire a boutique board brand that makes some very fast race boards, give Jacko a call, and he'll start the junior race team for One Ocean Sports. So that's the juniors. A quick look at the masters, because there was the winning master athlete on the women's side this year. I had to verify her age 6 different times. Stephanie Schuyler. I was shocked that she was above 40. She looks about 30. She races like she's 25. Almost cracked the top 20. She's very impressive. And again, just like on the men's side, I hope this list can spur on some competition.
I think it's going to. I think as people start to get into the masters side of the racing a bit more, it's going to be a pretty competitive class. Already, I think Hood River has a pretty good Masters race, and it's a pretty competitive class. And they when they get on the water, it's they don't leave anything out there. They go harder than anyone. So
yeah, absolutely. No, the Masters are they're definitely the most passionate. Anyway, I said this is 10 to 15 minutes. I joked it was going to be an hour. I'm pretty sure we went even over an hour. It's getting bloody hot in this studio. So let's wrap it up there and maybe see if we can go for a little surf before the end of the day. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. This was just basically a test live stream today to play around with our new studio. Jacko, thanks for joining us over there in the hot seat.
No worries.
I think
Sweating it out.
We'll be doing a few more. We'll be doing a few more of these episodes, I think. Over the coming days and weeks. So stay tuned, folks. It's a new year. It's a new decade. Scary thought. And it's a new look SUP Racer. Finally, after 8 years, we got a home thanks to the crew from One. So we're going to wrap it up there. Join us again maybe in the next few days. Thanks for watching.
Yep.